Welcome to part 2 of this explore of the Stephen Udvar-Hazy Center here in Chantilly, Virginia. In this episode, I'll be spending the afternoon looking through this amazing collection of aircraft, all of which is part of the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. I'm now on an overlook at the Mary Baker Engen restoration hangar, where there's all sorts of aircraft at various stages of restoration. I see what looks to be an ME-109, an American TBM Avenger. Closer to the hangar doors, I see the front half of a P-51D model, and next to that is one of NASA's experimental lifting bodies. In this section, work is underway to restore the B-26 Marauder called Flak. Next to it is an aircraft I've never seen before. The docent says it's an Ilyushin 2 Shturmovik, apparently found at the bottom of a lake near St. Petersburg, Russia. I wonder how it found its way here to the U.S. for a Smithsonian restoration. Back in the main display hall, here's another view of that F4U Corsair. Moving down into the various aircraft engines on display, I found this beast of an engine, a Pratt & Whitney R4360, the very pinnacle of Pratt & Whitney's piston engine development. While developed as part of the World War II war effort, most of its use was post-war. It's basically four 1,000 cubic inch 7-cylinder radial engines, stacked one on top of each other, sharing a common crankshaft. There is a boatload of small parts in there. Here's the carburetor. The supercharger. Cylinder bank 1, 2, 3, and 4. Intake and exhaust valves. Here's a nice cutaway of an Allison T56 turboprop engine. You'd find these on airplanes like the P-3 Orion. The path through this engine starts with this 14-stage compressor section, the burner or combustion section, and 4-stage turbine section. Back up front, the central shaft turns a gear reduction unit, which turns the propeller. When I first saw this aircraft, I thought I was looking at a PBY Catalina. In fact, it's a Sikorsky JRS-1 amphibian. The sign says this is the only aircraft in the museum that was present at Pearl Harbor during the December 7th, 1941 Japanese attack. She's definitely in need of some TLC. Hiding here at the end of the display floor is the fuselage of a B-17G named Shoo Baby by her World War II crew. She's only recently arrived here at the Udvar-Hazy Center after a swap was arranged with the National Museum of the United States Air Force out in Dayton, Ohio. The Air Force Museum took possession of a B-17D model called Swoosh from the Air and Space Museum, and Shoo Baby, a G model, came here. While likely years away, it looks like the museum will someday have a B-17 on display. Moving into the Cold War era, it's a bit hard for me to believe, but this F-14 is now considered a museum piece. Considering this design went into service 50 years ago, maybe it is a museum piece. This aircraft may look like an F-35, one of America's newest military aircraft, and for good reason. It's a prototype model that was used in proof of concept trials. And next to it is an A6 Intruder carrier-based aircraft. An old F4 Phantom. And one of the Phantom's adversaries, a MiG-21. Going back a bit further to the 1950s and the Korean War, this is the USA's first jet fighter, an F-86 Saber. Parked nose to nose with its primary adversary, the MiG-15. Here's a lineup of American helicopters: an AH-1 Cobra, a UH-1 Huey, and a CH-46 with its rotor blades folded. This Curtiss Sparrowhawk comes from a time when the U.S. Navy was experimenting with blimps and airships. This airplane was launched from an airship and returned to the mothership by snagging a carry bar with the large hook. At least that was the idea. Above my head, hanging from the ceiling, is an experimental electric-powered aircraft, the Pathfinder Plus. Remotely controlled, it proved the concept of solar-powered flight, but only just, because it's not capable of carrying a person. This little bugger is a Bait Aircraft BD-5. It's sold as a kit plane starting in 1970. This is a Boeing 307 Stratoliner, a 1940s era passenger liner. Either this aircraft borrowed heavily from the B-17, or the B-17 borrowed heavily from the Stratoliner, because the similarities between the two aircraft are abundantly obvious. This is one of the 14 Concords that are now all retired. What struck me about this aircraft is the size of the passenger windows. They almost look like little postage stamps. A Curtiss Helldiver with its wings folded. As I enter the space hangar, I find the model that was used in making the movie Close Encounter of the Third Kind. This model was the mothership in the film. Made from an assortment of model kits, mainly parts from model railroad kits. The plaque says there's a tiny Volkswagen bus, a submarine, an R2-D2 robot, a U.S. mailbox, an aircraft, and a small cemetery plot, all hiding in various recesses of the model. The only one I could find is R2-D2. The centerpiece of the space hangar is the Space Shuttle Discovery. When the shuttle program ended in July of 2011, there were 4 vehicles remaining. Discovery ended its career with STS-133. She landed on March 9, 2011 at 11:57 Eastern Standard Time on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center, never to fly again. Some of the heat-resistant tiles. Walking out of the space hangar, I find this interesting piece of World War II era German aircraft engineering, a Messerschmitt Me-163, also called the Comet. This is a rocket-powered aircraft intended to be a fighter. However, it came out somewhat late in the war and was plagued with problems, one being sometimes they exploded. In any case, they had little effect on the outcome of the war. Here's another one-off aircraft, a Northrup Flying Wing. This is a 1940 design. It did lead to the development of aircraft like the B-2 bomber. We're back near the museum entrance and the SR-71 that greets you as you enter. I've been here most of the day, exploring an amazing collection of aircraft. Aircraft from the earliest days of manned flight to some of the latest aircraft, many of which are still flying today. Yet, there's more to see. Unfortunately, that will have to wait for another visit. So remember, life is a journey. Enjoy the ride, and thanks for watching.